Abigail, you're very welcome to another episode of Kickoff Sessions. I've been following a lot of your bits on LinkedIn on time management, productivity, all that kind of good stuff. And I'm a big advocate of the area myself. So I've recently podcasted with Graham Alcott, which all on productivity, which really got me on this area. But like before that, I've just always been interested in it. I'm a bit of a freak when it comes to managing time and whatnot for my own work. So getting an actual expert's opinion on like what to do, like when to do it is going to be hugely valuable. So you're very welcome.
Amazing. I am so excited to be here and for this conversation.
Yeah. So before we get going, do you want to give a small background into like your own time management, where you got into it, especially your book, and like how it all started? Because I know before you started becoming an author and before you started going through a lot of these different methodologies, you had a career in financial services, like myself, like a lot of my audience as well, would be young people that are involved in tech, finance, and just other different areas as well. So a bit of a brief background, if you don't mind.
Amazing. Well, so me in a nutshell, I worked in investment management, asset management, and hedge funds in the marketing departments for over 10 years. I've got a degree in marketing, a postgrad in marketing. And my interest in time management started at the age of 4. My dad used to come home from work and talk to us about what he'd been doing at work at the dinner table, talk about it right at the beginning of my book. So, you know, thanks, Dad. And I just became fascinated with why people do what they do, and then what divides people, if you like, from the people who get what they want and the people who are not getting what they want. And I was just always asking these questions like, but why do they do that? Why don't they do this? Why? And I couldn't understand. So then I do my career, and it was sort of reinforced through that, was then reinforced through my study. So I've just always been on a journey of understanding why people do what they do, and managing your time. And your time is really your most valuable commodity. These 24 hours we get, we all have the same 24 hours, but we don't all have the same beliefs about time.
And we also don't approach it in the same way. So like when I was in college, I was often just kind of messing around, fucking about, not really using my time to the best way. And now as I got older, you know, I'm managing a job, I'm managing a podcast, I'm managing a relationship. So my time is like getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So there's more of an emphasis on like being able to manage it effectively, you know? So like from your own perspective, how did you kind of make that transition from working in hedge funds to really focusing on time management and really trying to build a career around it?
Yeah, well, so that's such an interesting question. And so there's 2 things in that then. So the first one is you don't know what you don't know. So when you're young, you just think you'll have all the time in the world, and you don't know that, you know, learning how to manage it, and that your time is like an asset. It is like, imagine stocks and shares. It is a commodity that you have, and where you're using it is how you're investing it, and your investment is getting you the result. So that first thing is you don't know what you don't know. And then the second thing is common sense isn't common practice. So I talk about this phenomenon that I've observed in my book, and I call it toxic time management. This is the obsession with learning more, but not doing anything with it. So fundamentally, nothing in your life is going to change until you take an action. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference between the people who have the results that you want and the results that you have.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree, because even with podcasting, even yourself, when you're getting out there and writing, you know, at first it sucks, but it's meant to suck. You know, that's like a part of the process. Like you're not meant to know all the answers. And definitely my own example, like whether it's university, whether it was my first year in a graduate program, whether it's trying to launch a podcast, there's always going to be times whereby you have absolutely no idea what you're going to do next. But I think it's because you build up experience that, okay, I've been in this situation before. It's always just a series of problems. Like you're trying to solve issues continuously. And once you build up that understanding that, hey, this is a new problem, I just need to find a way to work through it. That's when you become really experienced and, okay, I can try multiple different stuff. And you know what? I have the awareness and the self-belief that I can actually do this, which is a contrast towards saying, okay, I need to get more experience, or I need to read more, I need to learn more. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned over the last year or two when it comes to actually doing shit.
And what you're describing there is what Carol Dweck, one of the famous TEDx talks, talks about, is the growth mindset. So the fixed mindset, saying, yeah, I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. I know there's loads of videos, but I just don't have time, and it's really complicated. And I tried to watch them and I didn't get it. So I'll maybe launch my podcast like next month. And this is what the classic thing. So life, business, anything you want, it's simple, really, really simple. Like it's binary. You can read a book, you can tell me, you can sit down and you can say, okay, so this is how you hack your time. This is what deep work is. This is what, sleep science is. This is what rest is, yada, 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 yada. Certificates, certificates, certificates. But you only get the results that you want in your life by taking the actions. And so that is the growth mindset. That is saying, how can I? And you've already told me a bit about your audience. So I'm super excited to know that they are growth mindset people. They are, upwardly mobile, motivated, personal development, interested, and you will get a life that you want with that kind of mindset. And that is it. So a lot of what I'm doing really when I'm working with my clients is probably about 80% mindset, because they know what to do, but they don't do it.
I get you. So let's go from ground zero, just like building up from the very beginning. So when you're approaching something like time management, and let's say we look at it from the practical perspective first, or even a mindset perspective, what's your angle on that? Because as you say, we all know that we shouldn't be scrolling through Instagram or flicking through LinkedIn or, watching Netflix, but what is it we should be doing, or how could we approach this to really improve it from the beginning?
So step one is, what do you want? What impact do you want to make with your life? What do you want from your life? What kind of lifestyle do you want? What kind of job do you want to work in? What makes you happy? And this is like that $1 million question that gets people really, really stressed, because they're like, I don't know my purpose. I don't know this. I don't know that. I don't know the other. And I get it. But the more we say we don't know, the more we're actually reinforcing, I don't know. So much of getting started is coaching yourself to have an open mindset to saying, I don't know right now, but I know I'll know. I know. And the best way to find out is to try things. So to try something, don't like it, quit, cut really quick. Because if you're always thinking, my time is my asset, so I'm investing to learn, do I like this? I'm investing to learn, do I like that? You have to be able to cut quick, make a decision. And how do you make a decision quick? You trust yourself. You trust your gut, you trust your intuition, you trust your knower, wherever that is in your body that that feeling. It might be in your gut, it might be in your left foot, it might be in your right hand. You might get like an itchy ear or head or whatever it is. And then you start to recognize, oh, that's it. I really enjoy this. Like, I love creating training and delivering training. Like, I love nothing more than doing that. Some of my peers outsource the actual creation of their presentations. So they'll draw it all out on a piece of paper and they'll get somebody to make it for them. And then they'll edit it. For me, it's part of my alchemy process. So if somebody says to me, Abigail, I would like you to come do a talk and speak to this audience on yada, yada, I then start percolating, how am I going to do it? What steps, what slide is going to come first? So that I have rehearsed it in my head 1,000 times before I deliver it. And that is my joy.
And where do you think that stems from? So is it because you're naturally good at communicating with people, you like interacting with people, building relationships, so for you, you got that enjoyment from it, whereas it could be someone else who's quite technical, likes being down like the detail, so likes to, let's say, work on software projects or whatnot, and they've developed that like love and interest for it. So do you think for you was built out of interest, and then you've just essentially scaled that into something that's a profession and something that you enjoy to do?
I think my interest, Darren, really comes from helping people to understand and see what I can see, how I can see it. So I am just so passionate about simplifying things, clarifying things, and helping people to get that first step, to get started. You know, I said it's about taking the action.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, this is where the 888 formula came about. I was invited to do talks about time management, and I had all my slides. You know, they were talking about how to avoid distractions, how to remain focused, how to deal with overwhelm, how to prioritize your to-do list, all of the tools.
Mm-hmm.
And the organizer was there going, yeah, great. And the audience were crossing their arms and going, if you've ever seen that face where someone's like, and you're speaking, it's really not the face you want to see, because that face is basically saying, I'm bored. Yeah. I know this. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that they knew it, but they weren't doing anything with it, which is why I was brought in to help them. So I had this one slide that came up and it said 888. And they got their phones out and they took pictures and they social media'd it and they private messaged me and they said that formula has changed my life. People who were my peers, like 20, 30 years in the industry, would say things to me like, this is amazing, this is revolutionary, this is a game changer. And I was a bit like, really? I've just taught you how to divide 24 by 3, because the 888 formula is the simplest way to divide your 24-hour day based on science and society. Mm-hmm. So science says we need to sleep 7.5 hours per night is the average. So let's call that 8. Society says that we need to be working 8 hours a day. So then the middle 8 is what's left. That's your life. Mm-hmm. And people are like, what? Say that again? Hang on. And they almost sat there in the presentation scrolling their phone going, what did she say? My life. And then the questions start. And then they're like, where does my commute go? Mm-hmm. This was, you know, BC
Pre-COVID.
2020. Where does my commute go? I'm like, the middle 8. My relationship, the middle 8. My family, the middle 8. Working out, the middle 8. Literally everything is in the middle. We call this the jam in the 888 sandwich, if you like. And so then they're going, yeah, but I'm not sleeping enough and I don't have a life. I'm like, where's all your time going? Well, I work about 16 hours a day.
Yeah. I can relate to that.
And so that's then the penny drops and people are like, right, so what do I need to do now? So then we can start talking about the tools, the tactics of the tech. Suddenly they're like, tell me again about that hacking the to-do list and how do I do this, that and the other? Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah. So I literally went from the 888 being one slide sort of towards the end of the presentation to being invited in to talk about the 888, like introduction to the 888 formula, how to help people reclaim an hour a day. Because when they understand the formula, suddenly it's like they see time in a different way. And here's the crazy thing, Darren, this has been around for about 200 years. Like, I'm not brand new. I'm not the first person that's divided 24 by 3. You know, I can't claim that I own science, but the stages that I've taken it to and the training that I do is all mine. So
yeah, I love that, because what strikes to me about this more than anything else is the fact that, like, the 888, looking at life, work and your sleep, really shows like equilibrium in your body. Like, so, you know, we need like a certain amount of sleep, we need to work because we need to get returned for financial needs, and we also need a life. But you're also pulling different levers continuously. So for me, if I'm in university, I need to get something done. I'm not sleeping as much, I'm working more, and I have no life. But it's okay, because university is finite, it's going to finish. But in the real world, it's not. And that's the big awakening for younger people of my age, you know. Like, for me, I do work a lot, I have decent enough sleep, but I can see at different times how this goes back to, like, you're losing one of them or another. And what's interesting is this, if you're familiar with the term of mean aversion, so basically it's an approach back towards the mean of 888 in this example, is that your body will have to come back to this equilibrium, because otherwise you'll essentially burn out. And burnout's an area I want to chat about as well down the road. But I think that's quite interesting because it just shows in a very simple context how if you don't balance these different areas, something's going to fall down. It's going to be the relationships, it's going to be yourself, it's going to be your work. And that's pretty apparent straight out the bat.
Yeah. So if you imagine like the 8, so like buckets, and you're putting water into each of the buckets, like if one bucket's got too much in, it's just going to overflow.
Mm-hmm.
And then another bucket might not have enough in. Or, you know, your mobile phone, you charge it every night. So this whole Instagram fad of like you can sleep when you're dead. My thing is like you'll be dead
Hustle
sooner than you
culture.
know if you don't sleep, because sleep is when your body rests, it recharges and it repairs. And if you don't give your body enough of that for enough period of time, like it's okay if you've got exams or work is really busy and your sleep gets impacted for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. But if this carries on for a couple of years, this is when you get into the burnout. This is when you get into the more serious illnesses. This is when your health, which is your wealth, is just fundamentally shaken to its root. And then because it's been building for such a long period of time, you can't just stick a plaster on it. Because unfortunately, like it needs repair, and repair takes time. And this is one of the things. So it's like, check yourself before you wreck yourself. The words of a song. I always forget who said it. Maybe MC Hammer or somebody sang it years
back in the 90s or the early 2000s.
Yeah, Google it.
But I do love that though, because like your sleeping pattern is habitual for sure, and you really do build it up over time. So you either ruin it or you make it better for yourself. And you know, when people get on that kind of coffee culture, even myself, you know, you see yourself as ruining it, and then it takes away from other aspects. So like when you're working with a client, what do you focus here? Do you focus on their life straight away, or do you focus on their work, or do you pretty much analyze all different 3 parameters? Like, how do you approach this?
So the client will always do a time audit. It sounds ridiculous and slightly binary, but you can't change what you don't know. So you've got to measure it and audit your time. And then once you've audited your time, you then see which area of your life you're out of balance. Most people are out of balance in their sleep area and in their work area. The majority of people don't come to me with like the perfect life, if you like. They come to me sort of, you know, overwhelmed and stressed, obviously, because otherwise why would they be coming to me? Well, maybe they want to hang out, but you know. So
paying for a friend.
Exactly. So and that's another podcast. So we will usually start with their sleep first, because here's the interesting thing about sleep. And if your audience is interested, I would highly recommend you read a book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker.
I love that.
It will scare you into sleeping.
He's a great guy.
He's a great guy. And like, he's really, really thorough in the book. I kind of touch on sleep in the book, in my book, and then reference by his book. But when we don't sleep enough, we are much more emotional. And when our emotion is high, our intelligence is lowered, which means that we're not making the most rational, most logical decisions when it comes to our career, our relationships, our life. And then it just perpetuates and it carries on and on and on. So if you're sleep deprived, you're not going to go, oh, you know what, it would be really smart if I went to bed early tonight. You just get in a habit pattern of not sleeping enough, and you get in a habit pattern of caffeinating yourself, you know, taking tablets, doing the whole shebang. And basically you don't need to. Like, your body is an incredible machine that can generate its own everything if you are working in alignment with it. And if you're not, you are going to need every single thing in the shop to get you through. And I don't know about you, Darren, but I didn't come to this life with the decision that I was going to just get through it. I came to this life with the decision that I was just going to freaking have as much joy and enjoyment and laughter and fun as I possibly could while I was here, and get to the end of it and basically be like, yeah, I maxed that out.
That's awesome. How do you get to that level of like improving your sleep? Is it by, you know, rechecking your work and trying to reduce that? Because like for instance, you know, work would play on my mind, let's say, quite a lot. I'd always be thinking about it or looking at emails and whatnot. This feeds into the latter stages of the evening, whereby I'm about to go to sleep, and then it would hinder my sleep, subconscious or consciously. How do you like approach trying to improve your sleep essentially, and take that for an example to do at work?
So we will start by creating a sleep routine. So you first of all make a decision, this is what time I'm going to go to bed,
Mhm.
because this is what time I'm going to wake up. So not to like go over the sleep too much, because Matthew Walker's book really does go long into it, but I'll just give your audience like the top things that are relevant. We sleep in 90-minute cycles, which means that your body goes down into sleep, to the deepest sleep, and then up from sleep, and then back round again. Each of us needs a different number of cycles. As I said, 7.5 hours is the average. If I get that, I will naturally wake up not needing an alarm. You know, when you've had enough sleep is when you may wake up without needing an alarm. When you're sleep deprived, it takes you quite a long time to get to that place. But you can get to that place, and you get to it by working out how many hours roughly you think. So you start out by saying, well, maybe I need 8 hours sleep. Maybe let's start with the 7.5 hours sleep. So then that means that I need to go to bed at 10:30. Actually, it means I need to go to bed at 10, because it takes me about 15 minutes to get ready for sleep. And then you practice it out in your life. So you go to bed at that time, you see how you feel when you wake up. If you're one of these people that wakes up in the night because you're worried and you're stressed, you're anxious about work, one top tip, and this isn't scientifically proven, but it just works for me, get a notepad and pen and put it by your bedside. And if you wake up in the middle of the night because there's things on your mind, turn on the light, pick up the notepad and pen, write it down, turn off the light, go put your head back on the pillow again.
Mhm.
If you're not going to sleep, sit up in bed, turn on the light, pick up the pen and paper and write down everything that's in your head, like the washing machine of your head, write it on paper. Turn off the light, go back to sleep. If you're still not going back to sleep, repeat again. And you repeat it as many times as you need to until your brain gets, right, if you don't go to sleep now, I'm going to keep making you do this for the entire rest of the night. Trust me, something in you just goes, okay, I'm going to sleep. And you will. And you do this practice for as long as it takes, like night after night after night. It's like you are not your mind. So you are telling your mind, I'm in control.
Mhm.
And I am going to kind of like, by turning on the light and getting up, it's almost like you're punishing yourself a bit, because it's easy to lay there tired
Mhm.
in the dark and be like, oh, I'm so tired, I can't sleep. Sitting up, turning on the light and writing is like work. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm tired, I'm going to sleep.
And then you're able to switch off.
So like eventually you wear yourself out, like, oh, for goodness sake, I'm just going to go to sleep then.
And you kind of decouple your thoughts as well with that. Because like I even know myself, if I'm thinking about something to do at work, or could be to do a podcast, whatever, I'll turn and just flick on my notes on my phone. Now, obviously, your phone isn't the best approach because the light like breaks your eyes essentially, and it's just not what you should be doing. But it does like essentially, you know, disconnect me from what's going on in my head. I just write down a couple of bullet points on my notes, whatever, leave it there, wake up in the morning, and it is a bit helpful. I'm able to fall asleep or whatnot. I think it does feed into my next day, kind of part of like a planning kind of stage as well, because it reduces that anxiety of, fuck, what am I going to do tomorrow? Or I hope I remember this tomorrow or whatnot. And it feeds into the second element then, which is your actual work cycle.
So yeah, so like the sleep routine is what helps you to feel rested, and it takes time, and it's a practice thing, and it's something that you know what it's like when you've had a good night's sleep, so you're ready and committed to give it a go, to try it. The what am I going to do tomorrow for work, like, because it's on my mind, that is another protocol, and that is where at the end of your day, before your day is finished, for about 30 minutes, you look at your to-do list, where you're at, you look at the projects and everything that you're working on, and you write your to-do list for the next day.
Mhm.
So that when you start that next day, you start knowing what you're doing. And if you want to be a deep worker, if you want to be a productive worker, if you want to be like the best of the best with the elite habits, there is nothing that is going to get you there other than this activity, setting yourself up for the following day. Because you're giving yourself focus. When you're going to bed, your subconscious, you instruct, this is going to be a bit woo-woo, you instruct your subconscious, come up with the answers for what you're working on. So that when you wake up the next day, you have this like amazing thought. Yeah, of course you did, because you instructed your subconscious to come up with it. And why would your subconscious come up with it? Because you've studied, because you know your stuff, because you're a subject matter expert, because you trust yourself. Because what you're doing is aligned with what you came here to do, which is your soul's purpose, and all the answers to everything are inside of you. Mm-hmm. So it's really about getting to a place where you trust yourself, you are in charge of your life, your time, your game, your show. And then the whole, well, do I do Pomodoro? Do I do 90 minutes? Do I chunk? Do I do this? Do I do that? Do I do the other? They're all like the icing on top of the fairy on top of the cake. Let's talk about the cake first. You are the cake. And when we cut that, it needs to actually be a cake. And some people, when you cut it, it's like, there's nothing there. Because everything they've got, all the certificates on the outside and all the books they've read and all the courses they've taken, and
maybe people are too focused on trying to do the day-to-day, certs and whatnot, versus thinking on more of a global scale and more of a macro scale. So as you said, going from day 1 to day 2 and being able to map that out is more valuable than trying to just get the surface level kind of topics that really don't have much value. I think that's really where I kind of learn the differences, because funny enough, I have like a spreadsheet that outlines everything. It's my day-to-day activity. I have one tab for work, one tab for life, one tab for podcasting, and just a bit of everything. And I think being able to have that macro view has been way more helpful than trying to fill the gap with just things that are just not valuable,
So let me share something that might be useful for you, for your audience also. So this is based on project management techniques. I call it the traffic light formula. In project management, they would call this the RAG system. So this is where you prioritize your to-do list based on activities that are green, that are amber, that are red. So your green activities are the ones that are your job. They're the ones that you absolutely have to do. They're the projects you're working on. They're the deadlines this week. Your amber activities are the ones that are leading to these things. They are the relationship building. They are other projects. There are other stages. They are the balls that you need to get rolling, but they are not the priority. And then the red activities are the ones that are just on all of our lists. And 9 times out of 10, they're admin activities. And so for us, it's really about working out, what can we delegate? What can we outsource? What can we get other people to do? And it's important that we do it ourselves first to work out how to do it. But then so like for you with your podcast, you're going to get to the stage where there are things that take a lot of time. There are experts who do it. So you will outsource that to them. Within your organizations, there are things that just happen to be on your job description, your to-do list, because it's legacy, because no one's ever questioned it, no one's ever looked at it. And just because we've always done it doesn't mean that we always need to keep doing it.
Of course.
So it's about finding people within your organization. It's about looking at what your KPIs are and saying to your managers, to your leaders, to your team, I'm unable to work on this because I'm working on this, which takes priority. Is there any resource to rehome this to this team or that team or the other? If they say not right now, then you say, okay, cool, but this is like impacting my ability to do yada, yada, so that then they know, so that you're always managing yourself, your time, your tasks, and that you're aware of what is moving the needle and what's not.
I love that. And I'm 100% back you all that, because setting your targets for work and your expectations is more important than almost doing the work. And I think that's a huge part which feed into promotion, which is salary changes, bonuses. And I think that's what I try to pass off usually to people that are like graduates, is the fact that, if you have time, people will slam you at work no matter what it is. There's always going to be there, and there'll always be work for you to do. But over a 3-month period, 6-month period, or a year period, you should really have those discussions with your line manager, your functional manager, and say, hey, what are the targets? What do I need to get done? What is the reward for doing this? Which is almost more valuable than doing the task. Outlining that timeline and then just smashing it, and if you miss it, like that's a big thing as well, as like I've missed targets, I've missed loads of targets in KPIs, and I've missed this deadline and that deadline. But once I know that this feeds into the overall progress of a promotion, salary change, new job, new career, then it kind of makes it worthwhile, because it's like, okay, I hit this to 90% accuracy or 70% accuracy. And that shows much more progression, I think, from a career aspect than let's try get everything done. Because again, if you keep asking for work, it'll just keep showing up on your desk and people will just start pawning shit off on you. So establishing boundaries, expectations, targets, and goals is more important to me than pretty much anything else in a work context.
And two other things to add to that then. So one is understanding that no is a full sentence. And also when you are saying no to something, you are saying yes to something else. And what you're saying yes to is what needs to get done. What you're saying yes to is yourself, is your commitments outside of work, is your finishing on time, is your yada, yada, yada. There are ways to say no without saying no. That's one of the most popular conversations or trainings that I have with people, is how to say no without saying no, because they're like, wow, they're more senior than me and I'm going to get in trouble. And then it brings up sort of beliefs and things that we work on in personal development. So then the other thing is around recognizing and understanding that how you're spending your time, how you're managing your career, and what you're doing with that time is creating your life. It's not creating anybody else's around you. So if you're being sort of the helpful person in the office and doing everybody else's work, that's impacting your 1-year plan, your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan, your wherever it is you want to go. And they're grateful in the moment, but the repercussions of that are going to last you a lifetime. Mm-hmm. So one thing that I would say that is really, really helpful is questioning yourself and journaling about things. So asking yourself the really, really tough questions. And if you can't do that, finding a buddy or finding someone else, even a coach, working with somebody to identify your blind spots. What stopped me from hitting that target? Let's get real. And not blaming people, taking full responsibility. I didn't hit my target, why? And clocking things and noticing things. So I put everything in my diary, every single thing, from the getting up in the morning to the meetings, to quick chats, to everything, so that I have something to look back on to see why I didn't hit a target in a week. Oh, I've done too many helpful calls. I've done too many podcasts. I've done too many this or that or the others. And just getting brutal. And like I said earlier, like checking yourself and keeping on top of it, so that then you can start to see, is it because I didn't know and I didn't realize and I haven't done it before, but now I have, I won't do it again? Or is it because this is a habit? There's something in me, like I'm a people pleaser. Has this come from childhood? Is this something that I am ready and willing to let go of now? Because if we imagine like life is like climbing a mountain, and we're enjoying every step, we're enjoying the view as we're getting to the top, because we might get to the top of the mountain and there's no view to be had because the clouds have come in. But if we imagine that we're doing this, we don't want to climb that mountain with rocks in our bag. And we don't want to climb that mountain with rocks in our bag that we don't need to be in our bag. So we're always checking what's in that bag and going, how did this get in there? I don't want that. And just leaving it on the journey. So like constantly repacking. And there's this phrase like, what got you here won't get you there. And that's because sometimes you can do things with rocks in your bag. Sometimes you can do things without really being, a full 360 assessment of yourself, like critical, whatever words people want to use, progress checking. But the more you enter different arenas, you can't.
Yeah. And it's really accountability, like looking yourself in the mirror. If you're familiar with David Goggins, who's obviously the extreme end of it, he's a ultra marathon runner. Like he has the accountability mirror, which is literally like, defining what you plan to say or plan to do, should I say, and then following that methodology the whole way down and seeing where the gaps are. Like if you're not talented enough or you're not skillful enough, identify that, and then you face off to a mentor, a coach, someone that can guide you there, and essentially try get to that level. Because I think unless you take that kind of ownership, then you're going to be left I don't know, you're going to be left disappointed. Well, so there's one side of it like that, and then the second one there where you said about, discounting things you don't need to. I frequently have that thought. It's like, I don't need to be doing this, or a lot of us don't need to be doing this. As in, like, I could be sitting on a fucking beach in South America if I wanted to for all my 20s, and that would be so much more enjoyable than grinding it out on an investment bank or grinding it out here. So if you are going to do that, I think you should do it with good merit. You shouldn't be doing it just so that you can become a VP or become a managing director someday. There should actually be like substance and merit behind like these decisions, or else you should just be doing something that's enjoyable, full stop, because it will come with its difficulties, and it will be long and arduous and, political at times. But I think that aspect of it is just as important as the accountability in terms of like long-term thinking.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting one because there are no shortcuts. And the reason there are no shortcuts is because the journey is the result.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is if you are trying to get somewhere straight away, you're not enjoying the process of getting there. Mm. And when you get there, you feel nothing, because part of the journey leads to the feeling. And that doesn't mean that you have to, hustle and grind and work yourself into the ground in order to get there, to have like some sob story of like, I did yada, 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 and like, I deserve it.
Yeah.
But it's about understanding that the steps and the failures and the process and the learning and the evolving and the who we're becoming is part of it. When I first wrote my first book, I freaked out, absolutely freaked out, because firstly, it had been quite easy to do it. And secondly, I had like an imposter syndrome of who the heck is this girl on the front of here? I'd come from corporate and now I'm running my business, talking to people about time management. Like I had an identity crisis. Who am I? I can't do this. Mm-hmm. And this time around, the process of doing the book was a little bit harder, yada, yada. But also I've evolved as a human sort of 7 or 8 years into my business now. But I have a perspective and I see things in a totally, totally different way, and have that gratitude because of the journey to get there. So it's not to say like that winning the lottery isn't amazing, but the majority of people who win the lottery, they give the money away and they go back to where they were within a matter of years, because they don't have the identity. So a lot of the work that I'm doing now is really around your identity of who you are, and becoming this confident time manager. Like, this is my time, this is my 24 hours. I am confident that I am spending this asset how I want to spend it, and that I'm not going to be guilt tripped into spending it how other people want me to spend it, and that the results I have are the direct consequence of how I've been spending it, how I've been investing it. And if I don't like it, I'll change it, but I'm not going to waste any more time beating myself up for how I coulda, woulda, shoulda. It's done.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, is like, where are you? What worked, what didn't work? Make an assessment, don't beat yourself up, get on with it. Watching the Olympic athletes at the moment competing for the 2020 Olympics in 2021, ironically, it's very interesting to see some of them like falling off the apparatus in the gymnastic sort of medals, and then getting back on again and competing. And seeing one of the British Olympic riders, who she's the first girl to ever win. I think she's the first person to ever win a gold medal in BMX. She fell off her bike on like a triple what's it thing. And the commentators were like, whoa. She got back on, finished her round. It wasn't high scoring, but went back out there again sort of 10 minutes later and doubled it and did all the flips and everything. and wins a gold, and she was like pegged to come in silver. So it doesn't matter what happens to you in life, it matters how you choose to respond, and that is your choice.
Mm-hmm. And I
So
think
mindset.
what's interesting there as well, as you said, it's the contrast with our generation is we need it now, we want it now, we see it on Instagram, we see everyone else that appears to have it instantly where it's not, like it's not at all, you know. And I think, as you said there about like evolutionary getting better, like that's like the whole purpose of it. And I was actually going to give your book as an example, how at first, you know, your first draft wouldn't have been up to what you wanted to, and then you would have, you know, went back to the drawing board, done it again, multiple revisions, and now we just see the picture of you at the front of your book, and it's almost as if it was always like that, but it obviously wasn't, you know. And that's the contrast. But what's really cool is like the Olympians and other sports, that's why sport is like really like honest. We can see people like screwing up and like fucking up and missing the penalty and scoring the try and whatnot, and it's much more like, yeah, honest at a point. Whereas what we see a lot of times now online is the end goal, you know. And even for myself, like that's why it's important to take those short-term happiness. Like I have a kind of a saying I've always had since university is like, don't sacrifice long-term goals for short-term happiness. And really what that kind of stemmed from was the fact that when I was younger, I'd always try to focus on a longer term vision versus these short term, just kind of like hacks and wins and trying to essentially just take short term happiness. And that could also mean sacking things off and not really focusing on my overall strategy. So, what this kind of all ultimately means is that in a culture whereby we want everything now and it's at the tip of our fingers, maybe when you're working for it harder and enjoying the process, then when you get to it at the end goal, it'll mean that much sweeter. As well as you may not ever kind of get there, because what even is get there? You know, you get the 100,000 downloads. What happens next? If I get the 100,000 downloads, I want a million downloads after that. I won't want to stop at that point, you know. And that's a dynamic that is always going.
And so here's the thing that and I hear you, because when I first started my business, it was all about how many followers do I have? How many social platforms am I on? What does this mean? What do people think about me? And it all came down to what other people think about me. It all came down to perception. It all came down to, how do I look? Am I wearing the right things? Am I in the right places? Am I gramming the right, yada, yada, yada. And we have moved into a time now where energy doesn't lie, where we're starting to feel a connection to people. Podcast downloads are, you know, going crazy for the podcast where people are authentically connecting and adding value just because they can, not because I'm telling the same story 500,000 times. Like this podcast episode is different to other podcast episodes I've done, because we are vibing differently and having a different conversation. And I think it's so important to just keep that perspective. Like, we're here once. This is a game. Play the game and enjoy playing the game, because you enjoy playing the game, not because you need to have something, not because you need to be something, not because you need to do something, because you are something. Does that make sense? And it's taken me such a long time to really get this in myself that I get excited now that my book has reached 18 countries in the world. It's gone to 5 continents. Don't think we're going to make it to Antarctica, unfortunately, because no one actually full-time lives there. But for me now, it's about the impact of how many people are reading that book versus how many thousands of copies have I sold, that I can just wander around saying, oh my gosh, I'm an Amazon best-selling author and I've sold 500,000 copies of my book. Aren't I amazing? When I am like, I'm an Amazon best-selling author, I've sold 500,000 copies of my book, which has impacted 500,000 lives, plus the additional, because every person is going to tell someone. Now I'm hitting my target, which is to get the 888 formula to 1 million people by 2025. And that's when you start to find your next level. That's when you find the next gear in your metaphorical car. And that's when you are literally like, okay, let's play this game. This game is about impact. How many lives can I impact? So I've said 1 million by 2025, Darren. I know, like, somewhere in me, it's 25 million. But then I freak out. So I'm like, okay, let's just keep it to 1 million. But here's the thing, everything is done like it's done, like it's done. So your podcast is going to be downloaded by millions of people around the world, because we're talking these things into reality. So it's very like a fine balance between I want this and I want it now, to I'm enjoying the journey and I know that it's already done. So then what do I need to do every day to bring this into my reality and get excited that somebody called? Of course they've called. They were always going to call. And then you start to play the game. You're playing the game with the universe, God, creator, whoever you believe in, and you're like manifesting constantly. Of course I'm speaking at that event. Of course I'm like booked to do this or that or the other. So then it's like, well, stop limiting yourself and your brain. So then to get back to time management, why does it matter that you are managing your time? Well, time doesn't really exist. But then again, it kind of does. So you're managing your intentions to maximize the time that you've got. How can I maximize this time and spend more time doing what brings me joy? Grow your tribe.
Absolutely. It's
Grow
like
your tribe.
It's planning things out, setting those targets, and then realizing that you actually deserve them when you've been putting in that work. You know, it's not about grinding 24/7, but I'm saying that you put in these actionable steps, and this is the reward for what you've done, and you do deserve it.
And you
know,
deserve it because you deserve it. Here's the thing, you deserve it because you deserve it. And the fact that you took the action steps when most people didn't means that you're going to manifest it into reality. So everybody could have whatever they wanted, but if they don't take the action, nothing is going to change.
100%. Abigail, I would say a massive thank you. I really appreciate time. I'd like to keep on going, to be honest, a couple of hours. You know, I think we go to a lower level of detail, but we should definitely follow up and do something similar again in the future, because I think this is awesome. There's a good vibe with that kind of topic and with a younger audience, because if you can get them when you're younger and start understanding why we're doing things instead of just doing them for the sake of doing things, I think you'd be much better off, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. And so my book is like the gateway to a lot of stuff. Like, I've distilled 1 million time management books, personal development books, courses, trainers, gurus from around the world into an 88-page, basically a manual to help you turn your time into productivity. Awesome. And yeah, it's just about getting on the journey.
Perfect. I say a massive thank you, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved this conversation, and I look forward to hearing from your audience, from what their top takeaways are. So please reach out to me on social media and let me know.